Bruins Beat is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by Prize Picks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5, and we're presented by Game Time. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. I am Evan Marinofsky, joined by Marina Maher. Marina, what is up?
How are we? It's nice to be back on the Bruins Beat.
It is. It's been a little while. You're busy as hell. You're doing a lot of things.
Yeah, a lot of irons in the fire, and then you're a mom on top of a horrible Bruins season. It's like I don't really want to talk to anybody.
Exactly. I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. I completely get it. How is being a mom?
It's great. I think this age is the best age. She's 2.5, turning 3. And she finally has a personality and can tell you what she wants now. And it's by far the best age out of her young life.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. And I assume she's growing into a Bruins fan. I would assume.
Yeah.
There's no other option.
She wants to listen to the goal song over and over, but the Zombie Nation on Spotify is 6 minutes long. And so
it is very long.
It's a battle. She just wants to listen to that the whole time.
I completely get it.
Over and over, yeah.
Well, we're here today, and I think it's pretty obvious what we're talking about, and that is Bruins end-of-season press conference. Charlie Jacobs, Cam Neely, Don Sweeney spoke Wednesday morning. We're recording this Wednesday afternoon, so we are pretty right after this. Dust has not settled yet, and there's a lot of reaction to this. I think there's a lot of mixed reaction. You're a recent season ticket holder, so you provide a good sort of how a season ticket holder will feel about this, and I know we'll get into that. Pricing wise, because Charlie Jacobs was asked about the 4% increase on top of the 9% increase last year. Testy between media and subjects. And I got to give the Bruins media credit. Ask good questions.
I think they did a great job. They held their feet to the fire, and I think Cam Neely asked to see Kevin Paul DuPont after he was going to stuff him in the locker or something.
Well, I do like how Cam Neely did the old, when you get a question right in class, but the teacher says, can you show your work? And you're like, oh, wait a minute, I got to show my work. And to Kevin's credit, Dupes did spin it into another question. And I think that we'll get to the drafting bit in a little. My biggest takeaway from the whole thing, obviously it was testy. My biggest takeaway was this quote from Charlie Jacobs at the end. He said, the team that we currently have, if healthy, with the additions we make this offseason, we'll be playing meaningful hockey this time next year in 2026. This is not supposed to be a 2 or 3 year, 2 or 3 year hiatus from the playoffs.
Yeah.
I know they say the playoffs aren't the goal. I do think, I don't think they think they're going to be cup contenders next year.
This year, the playoffs should be the goal the next year. You know what I mean? That's just naturally the progression, right?
It is.
So for him to be well, I actually liked how Cam corrected him and was no, our goal every year is to win a Stanley Cup. That is our jobs. I actually did like that from Cam today. But it was a little jarring that I guess what are we? If for me going into this press conference is what I wanted to accomplish, and I am so confused about what we are after.
That's the biggest thing is my own view of it is, and I've said this a couple times, is you're going to do 2 or 3 years as a playoff contender, a wild card contender, a third place in the Atlantic contender, which is fine as you make your picks, you let your guys develop, you hopefully make some solid trades, you make some moves to kind of bring in some other talent. That to me seems like what it is, and they were trying to get at that, I think, and but they made the point Sweeney and Neely did of we want to be a sustainable team. We want to be what we've been for the last 10 years, in it every year, a legitimate chance to win the cup every year. And to their credit, they have been in and around it for a long time. I mean, since 2018, every year you could make a compelling case that they would win the cup. Now the question is,
you don't have Patrice Bergeron anymore. You do not have Marchand anymore.
Completely, and that's the problem. So that's the problem, right?
That's where it's a little bit frustrating. Well, it's okay, you trade away all these players, you trade away your captain. Couldn't get a deal done with him. That was weird, sketchy, a lot of, and then I think going into the season, the Swayman negotiation, they bottomed right from that.
Yes.
No matter what happened after that,
that set the tone.
It really torpedoed them right away.
It did. I think that set the tone. I think when you do sort of the eulogy on this season, I think that definitely set a tone. I think Montgomery not being locked up at the beginning of the year, going in with a lame duck head coach, set a tone. I always referenced Moneyball with Art Howe, where he was like, I can't coach on an expiring deal. And Sweeney, by the way, is on an expiring deal. We'll get to that in a bit. I think that's
he confirmed it at the press
Yes.
conference. I don't know if you heard that, but he did confirm that
I did
last year.
And I think this is the most overlooked part of the whole thing. I think everyone's overlooking this because that to me is the biggest story coming out of this. But I do want to touch on sort of them contending next year. I think that's what most people a lot of people are focusing on. Can they contend? Like I've said this a couple times. I think they can contend next year if they go out. Like I want Mitch Marner. I do want Mitch Marner, and they have the money to get Mitch Marner.
Mm-hmm.
But will they actually, or will they go for mid-tier? Will they go for Bessers?
That was what's so surprising to hear Don and Cam say that they need to get more wingers. And I was like, well, yeah, but like down the center of the ice is like their biggest, Elias Lindholm did not fill the hole that they were hoping for this year. And granted, he came in with a back injury and we don't know what he truly is because he wasn't 100% healthy until the end of the year. But at the end of the year, he did show some promise. So it's like, what is this team actually? But yeah, you're 100% right. They have no Charlie Coyle, they have no Brandon Carlo, and they have no Brad Marchand. That's a big hit to leadership. You make Pasta the captain, and you got to bring in reinforcements. Like, yeah, I would love Mitch Marner on this team, unless he's asking for $16 million. I think
that gets a little
need
much.
Offensive upside. They have David Pastrnak, and that's it. Morgan Geekie got his goals towards the end of the year. He got hot. Hopefully they re-sign him. He's an RFA. I'm sure they will re-sign him. And so maybe that hampers what they do because they'll be like, oh, we re-signed Geekie. Like that was enough, for them to do. So that's what I worry about, the internal struggles of that sense. And it's like, okay, like, are you going to give Merkulov like more opportunities? Are you going to give Lysell more opportunities? I think in a season that was so dreadful and so just like god awful, and they wouldn't play the kids, like they wouldn't give them a chance to see what you are going to be next season. I think that was the most frustrating part of it all. But yeah, I agree with you. I think they can contend for sure. I think the roster that they have currently, David Pasternak's gonna drag them, I think, to the playoffs next year, but they need help, and it's so apparent. And I hope it's not through free agency. I hope it's more through trade. Mitch Marner, I would 100% welcome though. I think him that 1-2 punch with him and Pastrnak would be amazing.
So the reason they're not focused down the middle is I don't think they have options. That there's no free agent out there who's a number one center, and you tried that last year, and it has blown up in your face so far with Elias Lindholm. And the second is, like, we don't, with trade wise, maybe you can make something work. Maybe a number one center becomes available and you do have a couple more draft picks or prospects to trade for that player. I think your best bet for number one center is through the draft. And I think that's either the fourth.
But then it's like, okay, like
that's down the road. That's down the road. That's down the road. It is.
That doesn't help you next year unless the Bruins get, a really high draft pick this year, who, they could.
They should. The lottery balls fall their way. Maybe the ratings are down, Marina, in the playoffs.
They want the Bruins back in there. They could get them number one.
Bruins, Rangers, and 1 and 2 picks. That would be people like, I wonder how that happened.
And Don Sweeney still go off the board and pick someone.
That's right. pick a guy who was ranked 25th. I will say though, in terms of them contending next year, a lot has to go right. And I've said this, a bunch, is like,
but they were in the mix this year, despite being so bad.
They were.
You know what I mean? Like they could have gotten in if they didn't make those trades at the deadline. Like the Canadians were 31st in the league. Like,
did you like those deals at the deadline? Did you like the trades at the deadline?
I did up until Marchand. I love Brandon Carlo, but the concussion history really worried me. Like the fact that like any hit could be his last time playing really concerned me. Didn't love the fact that it was to the Maple Leafs. The Coyle trade I really enjoyed. Loved Coyle here, but you're getting Middlestat and picks, and I think he did a really good job at the deadline. Sans Marchand, I think he really fumbled, especially the fan base's reaction to that, as if he would justify it and be like, I think he even said today, like, it takes 2 to tango and you're like 2 to like make a deal, referring to Montgomery and stuff. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure Marchand wanted to be here. Like, I think you maybe lowballed him a little bit, or didn't really give him what his worth was. So that left a bad taste in my mouth. But I thought he did what he needed to do at the deadline.
I liked what he did at the deadline. I thought that was the right thing. Start get picks, get prospects, get some new blood in here. I'm fine with that. I think in terms of next season, you assume McAvoy's going to be healthy and rebound. You assume Hampus Lindholm is going to be healthy and rebound. You assume Jeremy
Fraser Minton and Patras, if they can make a real impact next year, you never really know.
I agree. They absolutely could. And you have guys like Luck Mellis and Providence, who maybe he makes a jump. But you do also have, is Jeremy Swayman. I assume he's going to rebound. He's going to have a full training camp.
Yeah, I was
to be healthy
about that, not to change topics, but everyone seems so down on Swayman, and I'm like, I don't know. I think it was again, like a lost year to begin with. I think he will bounce back. I don't entertain a trade for him yet. Like, you're in year 2 of 8 on a deal. Like, I just can't see it.
I don't. Number one, who's in net next year if Swayman's not? Who are you getting? Who's your starter? That does not help you. And the second part of it is, you look at, he missed training camp, which is partially he's doing. I'm not saying he's not at fault. He partially is. He got his money. And they forced a big workload on him, which, should have been able to handle. But it sounds like from today, from the end of season presser, that's a big regret from this year. Sweeney wants them to go back to maybe a 1A, 1B. He wants not fully a tandem, but he looks like the second goalie next year is going to play more, whether that's Korpisalo or whomever. I know Korpisalo was kind of upset at the end of the year based on how much he played. But the other part of it, to me, is, do they have, I believe in him too much. I just think Jeremy Swayman is good. Yeah. I go back to that.
Maybe he's just good in the playoffs. Maybe they just need to get there, and then he'll.
That's it. Yeah. But the other part of this is, Marina, the defense in front was so bad.
Yeah,
that's the other end of it. And you also had the coach was halfway out the door at the start of the year. So, the odds were stacked against him. And again, I'm not making excuses for him, but I'm not trading him either. I'm not trading him right now. By the way, you'd also be trading him for pennies on the dollar. You're trading him at his lowest value. Why would you do that? So, Swayman, I'm fine with. And so, but my point is, for next season, you do have those three: McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, and Swayman. You expect Elias Lindholm to hopefully find that form he had at the end of this year. And the big question is Morgan Geekie. And this came up a bunch at the press conference. Sweeney says he's going to be on the roster next year. They want to find a long-term deal. And I like what Geekie does with Pastrnak. I really do. But there is a part of me that looks at that shooting percentage and goes, ooh, it is not his norm in his career to do that. Now, he finishes plays. He gets to scoring areas. He's not driving offense, but he's, again, he's a good finisher. He has a very underrated shot. But, can you count on that for a long time? And do you want Morgan Geekie as Pastrnak left wing forever?
Because I think they've been burned before where, someone has such a great year and then, they the next year. But I'm like, they can't afford to lose him.
That's the problem. They don't have a lot of NHL talent on this roster.
And so they didn't showcase anybody. Right. They didn't showcase anybody at the end of the year. So there's no one I feel comfortable throwing out there. So it's they have no choice but to re-sign him. Hopefully it doesn't hamper them much financially. But it's so if you told me even last year, as heartbreaking as it was, losing, if you told me there'd be no Brad Marchand, Charlie Coyle, Brandon Carlo on the team coming up this year, I'd be like, are you out of your mind? Just the fact of how all this has quickly unfolded. But again, I think it's a retool. It's not a rebuild. You have Swayman.
I agree.
Had a horrible year. But then you look to defense. You have McAvoy and Hampus. You have the pillars in place. You have Pastrnak, which I'm sure is going to be the captain. I think you have the pillars. You just need to surround them just a little bit better. And offensively, they desperately need it. It's Pastrnak, and that's it. And that's terrifying to waste Pasta's prime years. I think that's what Zadorov alluded to at the end of his media availability at the end of the year. But it's true. Get him some help. If you're seriously wanting to be in the playoffs, go get him some help.
You cannot waste his prime years. You can't. You can't waste them being in the lottery every year. You absolutely can't. That's why these people who are like, blow it up, trade everybody. You would spend the next 20 years trying to find the next David
You'd be
Pastrnak.
trading
You'd
him,
spend the next
right?
10 years trying to find the next Charlie McAvoy and Jeremy Sway. Like, you have the pieces. Now you got to build around them. And I was encouraged when Sweeney said, scoring potential of our group needs to hit a new level. So whether they do it or not is a whole nother thing, but they absolutely do need more scoring. And as I said before, finding a number one center this offseason, I think, is going to be near impossible to help you next year.
Mm-hmm.
Your number one center that you're hopefully getting is with the 4th or 5th overall pick.
Yep.
It's not going to be Sam Bennett in free agency or trading for someone in the offseason, because those guys don't just pop up.
Right.
The best way to score and to be competitive is on the wing, and that's Marner. And that's why I keep going back to Marina, and I've said this every episode.
I just wonder what his AAV would come in.
That's the thing.
Would he
but
take a shade under Pasta to, like, you know?
Oh, he's not. I don't think he's taking under Pastrnak.
Actually, get past the first round.
I can't imagine him getting under Pastrnak. And that's the thing. People have said to me, you can't have anybody making more than Pastrnak. And it's like, you have to win.
It's not 2016 anymore.
The market moves. The market's moving, and the cap is rising. Like, guys who are way worse than Pastrnak are going to be making more than him in year 5 and 6 of his deal. But that's just the league. So I in terms of contending next year, and it also hinges a lot on, and they said this today, Elias Lindholm being the number one center next year. It sounds like they are still hoping for that. And if there was anything to take out of,
give a guy that big of a money, like, he has to be. He
has to be. And, you hope he's fully healthy to start this year. He was not this past year. You hope that he can find that chemistry with Pastrnak and Geeky again. I would assume that's your first line next year. The questions really come in later, but I do have legitimate question marks about that top line. If it is Geeky, Lindholm, and Pastrnak just picking up right where they left off and helping you be contenders next year. I think it's possible, especially with Pastrnak there, but it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, and I also think maybe you give him a stretch, right? Like, you give him until Thanksgiving, and it's like, all right,
yes,
this is working, right? Like, let's go back to the drawing board. I think what we are not talking about is the head coach. I don't think Sacco is the guy.
No, I don't either.
I think it was pretty indicative. Like, he was mentioned in the head coach search, but, like, I feel like that's just like a courtesy almost. Like, I don't think he's the guy, and I think they'll bring in someone new, and they need to hit the nail on the head with the head coach.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on the head coach in a sec. But first, our friends over at Prize Picks. Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup. Whether it's points, rebounds, assists, take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series, starting with the play-in round. Every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you in the Takes 2 ticket sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1 to a VIP to the ship. It's a hell of a deal. Prize Picks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. Every Tuesday, Prize Picks will discount several projections on the board, usually by 15 to 25%. It's called Taco Tuesday. And there's Flex Friday. Make sure you opt in and tap the checkbox in your lineup builder to be eligible for the protected play. Choose squares from any game on the board, and if your lineup does not win, you get your net losses back and promo funds up to your promo limit as soon as the lineup settles. So, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So, Marina, you head coaching search. A lot of interesting stuff today. I agree with you. It really feels like Sacco, it's sort of as a courtesy to include him in this interview. And I do believe he deserves a shot. Like, he's been here a long time, worked under 3 good head coaches, and is a very good, has been a very good associate head coach. Dealt a bad hand this year. I don't, there's no sugarcoating that. But it did not sound to me like he will be back next year as a head coach.
What did you make of the comments Charlie Jacobs said about, the shelf life of a head coach compared to the shelf life of a general manager? Essentially, like, this is about to be their 3rd or 4th coach in the last couple of years now, and yet
3rd hire, yeah.
Sweeney's still the guy. What did you make of those comments?
I mean, it is true. Like, head coaches are more, you shuffle through them more often. Like, I don't think he's fully wrong. I think where you start to run into problems and you run into trouble is, all right, you're on your 3rd or 4th head coach you've hired.
It almost seems like they were trying to justify keeping Sweeney by saying that. Like, it's not Sweeney's fault. It's the head coach's fault.
I know. And here's the thing, right? Like, the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. And there's a big crowd that wants to fire Sweeney and Neely immediately. I think they're wrong. There's a crowd on the other side that thinks that they do no wrong. They're wrong. Like, to me, it's somewhere in the middle. Like, I do think Don Sweeney's a pretty good general manager. I think he's somewhere in the top 10 in the NHL. And if you were to move on from him, you would absolutely, and we'll get into this, well, we can get into it now, really, when it comes to contract talks. Because Cam Neely said, that, I think I have the quote right here. He said they're thinking about a Sweeney extension. He likes the collaboration of the staff. The year was a huge disappointment. He said, quote, I'll figure that out in the near future, whether we sign Don or not. And then he made the joke of it takes two to tango. It's a two-way street. Would not shock me, Marina, if there are other teams around the league who are clamoring for Don Sweeney. And people might think saying that. This is, again, general manager of Team Canada at the Four Nations has been in the running every single year for the Cup. Like, again, it wasn't his fault they flamed out in 2023. There have been other years where it has not been his fault. It wasn't his fault Rick Nash had the head problems that he had. It wasn't his fault about 2019 Game 7. I'm not trying to make excuses for Don Sweeney. But my point is, I do think firing him or letting him go or bringing in someone new is a slippery slope. I think he's a top 10 GM in the NHL, and he has been for a while. Now, here's the thing. Back to your point. All their problems boil down to they've been in it every year for, 8 or 9 years now, and they have no cups. They have no cups from Sweeney's tenure.
It's a results-based league.
It's a results-based league.
How do you get to fire all these coaches and not get fired yourself is the only question I'm going to ask.
There's the thing. That's the problem. And
I think they alluded to it several times today about their record-breaking season. Again, it was not Sweeney's fault. He went all in that year. Like, it was ultimately the players just didn't get it done. But you can't go back to that as a success. Like, you just can't. Like,
agreed.
The successes are the cups, and they have won in 2011. Like, it's just, I hate that as a barometer of Neely justifying, or I think it was Jacobs justifying Sweeney and Neely. And it's just like, well, we're just here just to get into the playoffs and like have great regular seasons. Like, no, we're not.
And that's the thing. And I think that's when it comes down to the head coaching search, and you can, kind of firing these head coaches. And again, Bruce Cassidy goes and wins a cup with Vegas. Claude made sense. I think we can all agree back then that made sense. And then Montgomery what was that?
Claude won a cup.
That's right. He did win a cup. He did win a cup. Only one of the last head coaches to do it. So to me, like, that's where it's you shouldn't get all those chances to hire head coach after head coach after head coach after head coach. At some point, someone has to take the fall for it in the front office. Now, I'm not saying Sweeney needs to be fired. Like, I do think Sweeney deserves a shot to clean this mess up. I do. Do
you see a scenario in which the Bruins do like what Vancouver just did, where they promote Neely and they put Sweeney as president?
Potentially.
And potentially. Then like, here we're getting a new GM. Good. That's because Sweeney's getting more control.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if Neely and Sweeney see eye to eye on player development fully. And that's not like inside info. I think Neely does value the big bad Bruins style a little more. And I think Sweeney's more open to the new school way of thinking. And he mentioned that a number of times. You need more speed. Obviously, you need to defend better, which that kind of falls in line, obviously, with Neely's line of thinking. But to me, like, after what Neely said on Wednesday about Sweeney's future, I think there's a world in which Sweeney doesn't come back next year and Neely's still here.
That was what my guess would be. I thought last year was his final year of his deal, and I was under the assumption that he would just leave after his contract was up, bearing whatever happens this year. And so when Neely didn't give a full we're going to try and re-sign him, I thought that was very telling.
I think that's very telling. Because typically when the guy's especially sitting next to you, and this is what they did with Montgomery a number of times, because I asked this question a few times of, is he staying? And it was always kind of beating around the bush. Mm-hmm. And, they always point to, it takes two to tango, negotiation's a two-way street. I don't think they really wanted Montgomery back. I don't think they really wanted him or saw him as
Then
the guy.
it's like then take a shred of accountability at this press conference and say, you know what? Yeah, it was a lost year. Like, don't get defensive and pissy after every question, questioning like why they did what they did. I think Mike probably had his eyes on the Blues job too and knew anyway, like no matter what, he probably had something lined up. Like, okay, fine. Like, that's fine. It's just, it just drives me crazy to like the Bruins media did a great job today, like really pressing them on these topics. And the fact that they got so mad and defensive about it, but they're also like, oh yeah, we're taking accountability. Like, this falls on me. It's like, well, which is it?
That's exactly it. And we said this before we came on, that's what annoys people. People were going to be mad at this press conference no matter what, no doubt. People don't like Neely and Sweeney very much.
They're giving everybody $100 and people would be like, why isn't it $200? Like, no matter what, it was going to be annoying, but it was even more infuriating the way they went about it. And I thought it was just such a slap in the face.
Well, that's the thing. And if you're going to take accountability, you have to say, yeah, we've fallen short and we need to be better.
And move on. Like, if you're like, okay, Jacobs, you're putting your support between them, but that's fine. But like, you should be able to take accountability and get reamed out and like answer the questions without like being pissy about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just felt like weirdly entitled, and like Cam just like getting angry about it like was just so weird. Like talking about drafting and the narrative and like, oh, he wants to change the narrative about all these things, but then saying like Sweeney didn't know he was going to be the GM in 2015, so he wasn't prepared, and they should have been.
That was a doozy. Did you hear that?
What?
I couldn't believe that. I can't believe I'm glad Neely was open.
Drawing board. No shit.
I did enjoy we shouldn't have stood backstage. We should have, went back to the table and talked it out. And I was like, I feel like we all, like you included, like we kind of look and go, 2015 was 10 years ago. We got to stop, talking about that. Like, move on. Like,
no, I just made me angry.
But then it's like, wait a minute. You're getting really deep into the 2015 thing. And I agree, it was 10 years ago. Like, I
for sure,
we are past it. But when you bring stuff up like that, and that is a reason why I don't want them to fire Sweeney, especially right now, because it's end of April. You have the biggest draft pick you've made since.
Yeah, but Evan, do you have confidence in Sweeney hitting this pick? The Bruins haven't had to pick this high because they've been good enough to get into the playoffs, and they've added at the deadline, so they didn't have picks. Me and Paddleburn talk about this often. Like,
well, this is the drafting thing.
I don't want to pick them.
This is the drafting.
Now that he has the opportunity, I am scared shitless he's going to pick the wrong player.
Yes, but do you trust some other? If they brought in some outside GM, right? Average GM X. I don't know who that would be, but someone random. Is it a guarantee that they make that pick either? Like,
I don't think it's a guarantee, but it's like, okay, do you have fresh eyes on an organization that desperately needs fresh eyes?
I agree.
I'm okay with someone new going off board thinking, oh, this is going to help the team. Like, I have no problem with that. I have a problem with someone who, has shown that they don't have a great tendency to draft, solid players. But again, I think maybe Sweeney needs to let more people in. Like, is the inner circle too small? Like, where is the disconnect when it comes to these draft picks that he's going so far off the board that, like, I mean, we got lucky with Pasta. Pasta was a late round.
And that wasn't Sweeney either.
Like,
that wasn't Sweeney.
Yeah, that's true. It wasn't even Sweeney. That's where I'm just like, I think it's so hard for me to have confidence in him when he hasn't shown me anything differently. And when they do make the picks, they don't play the players. They don't.
Well, that's a whole nother thing.
How many games did we see Lysell play?
That's a whole nother thing. But here's my thing with the drafting, right? Because I agree with you that there's not a lot of reason for confidence. I would also say though, Sweeney's never made a top 10 pick, so there is that element too. And I will say this, right? The difference between pick 16 and pick 36 isn't all that different. Like, it just isn't. And I'm not making excuses for them. I am not, because I don't want to make it seem like I am. I'm trying my best not to get fully sucked into like, fire him. He sucks. He's a terrible drafter when he hasn't made a top 10 pick. And 2015 was, 10 years ago. They messed up. they messed up. We've hashed this out a ton. I will go through. It's funny because the drafting thing is interesting because I was going back and looking because I do see people defending their drafting and saying, well, they were competitive every year and they traded their picks, and that's true. They did trade their picks. And I see people saying, well, they just suck at drafting. It's like, well, they have found some guys in the second and third rounds. Okay. So it's, again, somewhere in the middle. The problem with their drafting is not the high-end guys, because they haven't produced a lot of high-end guys, but they also haven't made high-end picks the last 10 years. The problem is, and the really good teams run into this, and this is what keeps you competitive for a while or ends your competitiveness. The Blackhawks ran into this big time. Can you hit on some of your third and fourth round picks over the years? I have the draft history up right now. I'm not going to look at the past 2 years because that's too close. You look at 2022, right? Matt Poitras in the second round. That seems to be like something. Then you have Cole Spicer and Dan Luck-Mellis in the fourth. You might have something with Luck-Mellis. It's still a little early to tell. Frederick Brunet might have something early. Reed Dick and Jackson Edward, we'll see. You look at 2021, Fabian Lysell. Seems like you've misstepped his development in terms of, Providence and bringing him up and showing him enough time up here. And you have, Brett Harrison, might be something. Philip Svedback, we don't know. Jelvik's been okay at BC. Ryan Mast, Gassot's been okay at BC. And Ty Gallagher. So, I don't know anywhere in there. Is there someone that's going to make a huge impact on the NHL roster? Maybe Harrison, maybe Lysell, but you don't really know at this point. That was 2021. 2020, Low Rye was your second. Okay, that's something. Trevor Kuntar seems like a bottom six guy, and somewhere in the AHL. Mason Langenbrunner, Riley Duran might do something at the NHL level. We'll see. You had 2019, Beecher, Quinn Olson, Roman Peichkov, Mateus Mankiewicz, Jake Schmaltz. I mean, that's you're not getting really anybody out of that. Beecher's giving you a little bit, but still, that was a first round pick, 30th overall. I'm not saying he has to be a world beater, but he hasn't really developed offensively at all. 2018, Axel Anderson, Jakub Lauko, okay. Curtis Hall, Dustin McFall, Pavel Shen. 2017, Vakanainen, Studnicka. Those are your first and second round picks. Neither panned out. And then Swayman with your fourth. I'll give you that. Obviously, That's a big one. And Cedric Perret, Victor Berglund, Daniel Bukak. My point is, you found a couple like Swayman, Lauko, Beecher. Outside of that, you don't have a lot of talent coming up. And I'm not saying that these guys need to be world beaters. I'm not asking for David Pastrnak in 2014, picking 24th overall. I'm not saying that. But it's finding those depth pieces. I mean, you even look at the Bruins top six right now. Geeky, you had to go get. And I'm not poo-pooing it. That was a good ad. I'm not saying it wasn't, but Zaka, Middlestat. A lot of these guys aren't yours. Elias Lindholm, you had to spend a lot for in free agency.
Yeah, when
and it comes down to
July 1, it's never great,
It's never a good sign. And so my whole point.
Chara, I'm trying to think of another free agent that has panned out.
That's the problem. It's Savard, Chara, and that's why free agency is such a miss. And that's why even Marner, I'm hesitant, but it's he's so good. He's been so good for a long time. He's 28. But so that's my whole thing with drafting. And I'm not to stand on my soapbox here and defend the team or go against them, but it's just they haven't been able to find those depth pieces or pieces that, your second line left wing. And DeBrusk was that for a little while, but he was inconsistent at times. And his tenure here was up and down. And so again, I'm only going back there to 2017. 2016, you had McAvoy, Frederick, and Lindgren as your first three picks. That's pretty damn good. You traded Lindgren for Nash, and Lindgren's turned into an NHL defenseman. Frederick's been an NHL forward, and McAvoy's a centerpiece of your team. So it hasn't been all bad, but it's been a while there of, you're not making all your high picks, but you're also not hitting on your third or fourth round picks or your fifth round picks either. So it's a weird middle ground.
They gambled trading away picks, and they gambled trying to get into the playoffs and do damage. And when the players don't perform, you gamble and you lose. And unfortunately, when you lose, someone should have to pay for that. That's where my frustrations lie. And especially when there's just no accountability, and to blame the scouting staff for 2015 was weird. And it's just they need to hit on this pick, or else I will have zero faith in this.
Oh, if they don't hit on this pick, Marina, they're gone. They're gone. And I also think, back to the Sweeney conversation, we didn't even touch on the head coaching. We'll touch on head coaching in a bit because you brought it up, and we do need to talk about it.
There's just so many side tangents we could go on.
We could go forever. We could do this for 5 hours, but we're not gonna because we have lives. But the Sweeney thing, when it comes to this season, right? Like he's going into the last year of his deal. If things go south this year, he's gone, right? Right? Like, has to be.
Has to.
I mean, I'm guessing that they're basing how he does this season and this offseason on whether or not he gets a contract at the end of next year.
I imagine so, but like nothing surprises me with this team anymore.
No.
But I'm so like it has to be Cam and Don. Like it can't just be Don.
I agree. I completely agree.
I've said it a million times. You need fresh eyes, and unfortunately, like this is what happens. It's a results league, and when you don't get the results, this is what happens. And the fact that they've lived this long, like with this team, is crazy. But we are in unprecedented times, and I think they're hoping that this 1 year was an outlier, and then that they'll be much better last year. I mean, the Bruins just simply bad luck. I think someone put a spell on them. I don't know what happened, but
it's the yellow seats. The yellow seats gone, ruined them.
Insane. And the fact that they're going to have to do this through free agency and trades and not with their own guys is tough.
It is. I want to get into the head coaching search. We did drafting. We've done a lot of this. We'll get into some more things in a second. But first, our friends over at Game Time. It is spring. It is nice out. Baseball games are awesome. Go to Fenway. There's basketball playoffs. You can go see the Celtics, or if you live in a different city, maybe the team there is in it, so you can go there. So Game Time is your friend for all of that. Last minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. There's zone deals. You save even more when you choose a section. Let Game Time choose the seats. All-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. You can pretend you're sitting in the seats before you actually are. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Marina, what time is it?
Game time, baby.
It's game time, baby. It's game time. Damn right, it's game time.
Find a coach.
Yeah, it's time to find a coach. It's exactly where I want to start. Head coaching wise, Marina, where do you fall on this? What do you? Are there candidates you have in mind? What do you like?
I'm out on Sacco. I didn't love that Sweeney was like, I'd like them to have NHL exposure, because I immediately went to the Denver coach, David Carl. I think he'd be great. They've had a history of coaches working out from Denver with Jim Montgomery, but then he left. So I was like, shit. So it's definitely going to be like a Rick Tocchet or something like that. I will riot if it's Tortorella. I will.
It can't be Tortorella.
Don't do it. It's interesting, but they, again, like the draft pick, they got to hit this nail on the head. Like, it's got to be a really solid choice, and you're in a weird position where the leadership is kind of up in the air. I mean, I think you know who your core leaders are. Like, it's always going to be one of McAvoy. Zadorov has become a leader. Hampus, obviously. Then you got Costa up front, who I think will be captain. But no one out there really excites me. Mike Sullivan doesn't really excite me. So I'm very curious if they dip into like maybe the AHL pool. But I don't think I don't want anyone on this current bench to take over.
No, I don't either, and I don't think they're going to go that way. I found this to be telling from Sweeney. He said communication with players is paramount. I want a coach that's going to evolve offensively, communicate with younger players. Power play needs to get back on course. Driving internal competitiveness we need to get back to. He couldn't stop talking about defending. They've gotten away from defending last year. Special teams, which makes me think they're going to overhaul the whole coaching staff. I think that's probably what's going to end up happening. But when he mentions like defensive, right? You know, being a defensive minded head coach, that typically is older sometimes head coaches, guys who've been in the league a while.
Yeah.
So is it like a Laviolette? Is it a Tocchet? Is it Gerard Gallant? Is it
Oh,
one of those guys?
that's where I'm like, I worry because that only
Doesn't
works for
excite
what,
me.
a year or two.
It's a band-aid on a big wound.
Yeah.
And to me, and it's so much easier said than done. You want to try to find the next Spencer Carberry.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want to try to find. Is there a head coach in the AHL who's been doing really well? Is there an assistant on a current NHL staff that you really like? Here's my thing with colleges. Running a college team and being a college head coach is so vastly different from running an NHL team and being an NHL head coach. And I like David Carl a lot. I think the world of him. I think he's a phenomenal head coach. And I absolutely think he can coach at the NHL level. And I'm not saying that he can't. But the worry is that the reason a head coach can last a long time in college is because the kids are cycling through every 4 years. They're beholden to you. And you recruited them. They're your groceries and you're cooking the meal. The NHL is not like that. You're dealing with vets who make a lot of money. They're not cycling through every 4 years. They are unhappy. They are, now obviously the college you have the transfer portal, but you got a lot more things at your disposal in the NHL, and it's harder to run an operation consistently. Mm-hmm. And that's why there's only Cooper, Bednar. There's only a couple. It's Mike Sullivan. There's only a couple NHL head coaches who last more than 5 years. And so that's why I worry about college guys. Now, Jay Pandolfo is different. Jay comes from an NHL background. That's why I found it interesting that Sweeney mentioned, where was the quote? It was,
he mentioned Jay by name?
No, he didn't. He did not. But he said something along the lines of, does it have to include NHL experience on an NHL head coach? No, but it should include some form of NHL exposure.
But that I hate that. It shouldn't have to be a former player who did his time.
Well, yes, I agree. I don't just want a former player, but someone that's where Jay Pandolfo's never been a head coach in the NHL. But he was an assistant, and he did play a lot of years in the NHL. That's fair. That's where, the Jay Pandolfo clause of, okay, and I'm not saying that they're gonna with Jay, but it's something to think about. And so
I also think you're inheriting a roster who it's new for everybody, right? To be going through this. And so I think that they could share that with a newer coach, right? They could share we don't know what the future is going to hold, and we can kind of do this together type deal. And there's no prejudices or any biases before they come in, right? If you bring David Carl in, he knows nothing about anyone on the team. He doesn't know, this guy doesn't like this guy. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff that, Sacco, who's been there for a while, has heard already. I think that actually does play a lot into it.
Absolutely. No, I completely. Absolutely. So I think that, with the head coaching search and things like that, it's so much easier said than done to say, go find the next young guy coming up. I know Marco Sturm's had a lot of success with the Ontario Reign in the AHL. Again, but I'm looking at former Bruins, I don't want to, the Bruins shouldn't pigeonhole themselves just to that by any means. So, I mean, there was a lot from Wednesday to digest. I think fans are pissed.
More openings will open up. Do you think more coaches will? Obviously, Mike Sullivan hasn't been fired yet. I'm trying to think of anyone else who's on that cusp.
Not
that I can think of, or maybe see through the AHL playoffs, see what's going on.
Yeah, I do wonder if the Bruins make a run, does Ryan Muginel get? Mm-hmm. I think he probably gets. They talk to him anyway. He's in house. Yeah, since Cassidy came up. He's been there for a while.
I'll definitely speak to him anyways.
So.
Jay Leach was an assistant with Seattle. Maybe they're hey,
Well, that's the thing. So when I mentioned you're clearing house on the bench, Leach is a tough one to just let go.
Just came back. Yeah.
Just came back. They pulled him from Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Providence, went all the way to Seattle, came back. That's a hard thing. Where are you going to put him? What's his, They interviewed him, I believe, for Montgomery's job in 2022. So, there is that element as well. You did look at him as a head coaching candidate before. I'd assume you probably still talk to him this time around.
I think so. I think you cast a wide net and then it gets, smaller.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So, we'll see what they do on the head coaching front. Do you have any names in mind that you like? I know you mentioned Carl. Maybe that's your person.
On my list, just because he's just won everything in Denver. But
yes.
I think for whatever reason, Tocchet makes sense. I think they want to get the most out of their players, and a guy like him is Tortorella 2.0, just a little bit younger. I feel like guys would like him.
Yeah, I mean, I do think
there's no one that's like a slam dunk to me.
No, I agree. I also think you do need a little bit of a jackass back in the head coaching role. I do wonder, like, it feels like after Bruce Cassidy, they tried to overcorrect to get a nice guy in there in the locker room, be nice. And not saying be nice, but like, you know what I mean? Like more of a player's coach. I do wonder if they start to go back in the other direction. I'm looking at my notes from that I took during the press conference. We did drafting.
What you make of the season ticket holder comments?
Ooh, thank you for bringing this up. Charlie Jacobs alluded to they have to, prices are high for everything and they want to be able to give their employees raises. Here's my question. Are those employees, parking attendants, concessions people who just work around the TD Garden, are they getting raises?
Are they actually getting raises?
Because if they are, then fine. Okay, fine. But we remember what happened during COVID when they didn't get paid for a while. Like, do I trust that they are giving their employees raises? I need to see it. So
everything is going up, and I understand that aspect. Like, they ultimately run a business, and everything's going up. But it's such a slap in the face when the Bruins just traded their captain away. They had the worst season we've seen in a long time, and then to say that is like, how much are you making, Charlie Jacobs?
Yes.
Like, you couldn't take a pay cut?
Yeah, and you're making lots of money.
I would like to hear the parking attendant's point of view. I'd like to hear the security people's point of view. Like, are they getting raises? If so, great. But it's like rich coming from like the owners. Like, it's just the way
coming from the rich.
You can tell he wasn't prepared for the question by the way he started through it, and it was just like, oh boy.
Yeah, and I get that things are going up. I get that the NHL's getting bigger and bigger. Gone are the days of showing up to the Garden for $30. I get that. But you're a season ticket holder. I'm not. Like, it's a lot of money. It's an investment of your time and energy and money. It's not just the tickets. You're spending money at the game. You're buying food. You're buying a drink. You're supporting the team. And I think 100%. And again, if you're trading your captain, like, how many marketable players are on the Bruins right now? It's Pastrnak.
One, maybe two.
McAvoy, maybe. And those are your two. How do you feel as a season ticket holder, as a new season ticket holder?
It really rubbed me the wrong way. I think you could say it in a way of like, we understand the fans' frustrations. Everything's going up. We are in fact paying people. I think just the way he answered it was just like so like entitled almost. Like he couldn't believe the question was being asked. That rubbed me the wrong way. And it was just more embarrassing that they're like holding the fan base over, like, because you like need to pay people more than a minimum wage. Like, I think it's the fans' fault,
It's like Mr. Burns.
No, that is ridiculous. I thought that was a laughable comment. Like, they have, I don't know where they rank in expenses for the leagues, but like, I know getting into the TD Garden is more expensive than going to like the New Jersey Devils or like, and granted, that's a testament to what the Jacobs have built. Like, the Bruins are a good team year in, year out, and they should be a high ticket price. But when you're talking about
and the hub on Causeway and things like that, they built the area up.
Like, they are, like they're investing in the team.
So. Yeah, and they spend to the cap. Like, they're the whole like the 90s and the early 2000s when they weren't spending to the cap. That was legit criticism. They do spend now.
Don't blame. You have to pay security people and
because if you're gonna say that, you better be doing it.
Right.
You better be paying them. If you're gonna give them a raise, then fine. But if those people are making the same wages they were last season, next season, then there's a problem.
I think Delaware North brought in somewhere like $4 billion last year.
Okay.
So it's like,
there you go. Yep.
How much are you making? Like,
that's a whole nother. That could be a whole series of businesses making a ton of money.
That's why I give like KPD like a lot of credit for asking the questions he did ask, because we deserve answers. Like, that's
what fans care about.
And so to be dismissive, like, don't complain about the questions being asked. Like, just take it. And like, that's the whole thing I gathered from this press conference, is that they're pissed off that people were even asking these questions. And it's like, no, like, you had an awful year. Like, it should fall on somebody. and they start their press conference by saying, like, we're disappointed, like, we have the accountability, and then they're dismissive of every question asked. It's like, well, which is it?
Well, that's the biggest thing. And I don't know, like, you know, do you expect to say, oh, we take accountability, and then expect the reporters to be like, well, what do you think of David Pastrnak?
Yeah.
How great was he? Like,
Yeah.
you know, to me, it goes so much deeper than that. Like, you have to be, and look, they stood up there and answered those questions, but like, you've got to expect and be okay with, you know, like Tara Sullivan asked something along the lines of, you know, basically insinuating, like, do you expect head coaches to be a little doubtful that you're the one interviewing them when you fired, you know, 3 head coaches now? And Sweeney got all, you know, I don't think anyone's gonna not, you know, interview here.
Yeah.
When the reality is, like, yeah, the Bruins have a great.
Who wants to not work here? Da, 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 da. It's like,
exactly, and the Bruins have a great history.
Being fired within a year, like, it's not
correct.
Not the team. It's because you are bad at your job.
Again, Sweeney's has 1 year left on his deal. He's fired a lot of head coaches.
Bruins making the playoffs will save him?
Yes.
You think that all they have to do is make the playoffs and he'll get a new extension?
I would think so.
Damn.
Probably. And I'm not saying that that's right, but I think that's probably how it works. Or like in terms of
now internally, I'm just like, oh god,
yeah, don't make the playoffs.
Bad season again. I don't know if I can do that.
I think it comes down to how Dean Letourneau develops at BC this year. I think it comes down to your 2024 picks. How do they do this upcoming year? If it's Haggs or Frendel or Denoyer, wherever they are, how are they? I think it comes down to your other draft picks you make. How are they doing? How are your prospects doing? Are they strong? Are they making, you know, strides forward? And then it comes down to on the ice, like, how are your free agent? How is Lindholm developing? Elias Lindholm. How does Nikita Zadorov develop? The guys you acquired this offseason, how do they do? Those are the biggest things. Can you look ahead and say it's possible to be contending for a cup next year or the year after? And if the answer is no, then yeah, he should be gone. Mm-hmm. But if the answer is yes, then it's like, all right, well, he's on the right track. Like, I'm not going to, you know, cut his legs out from under him when he doesn't deserve to have them cut out. So that's the big thing. That's why I think this year's huge. And that's why I don't think he's signed yet. I think
it's good too, to kind of know, like, he's GMing for his job almost. Like,
100% he is.
Put together the best possible team. You know, maybe he brings in Marner and, like, you know, they get some more offense, and because defensively they're pretty sound once you have Hampus and McAvoy back. You
need a Carlo replacement. That's what you need.
Yeah. Laura, you're just gonna have to live with what he is and his mistakes. Yeah, I agree with you. You definitely need a Carlo replacement, but I don't think they're gonna be as bad as they were this year.
No, God, no. They shouldn't be in the lottery next year.
No.
If you're in the lottery next year, something went horrendously wrong. And
they needed to do what they did at the deadline to then crater them to get a better pick, and then hopefully they hit on this pick, and we'll see what October brings us.
100%. And again, if they are in a position for the lottery next year, then Sweeney should 1,000% be gone, because then it shows it shows a huge problem with the roster if that's the case. So we'll see. Anything else from today? I mean, it was testy. It was good back and forth. It was good viewing. I mean, it was like, I'll give him that.
I don't know what I expected going in, but it certainly was not that. Like, did you think it was going to be like this? Like, just so, like...
Did I think it was going to be as testy as it was? I mean, Neely has a penchant for being good at that.
Yeah.
Like, Neely doesn't mind getting into it. Sweeney doesn't mind kind of clapping back. Jacobs is always
surprised that, like, they want to change these narratives, and it's like, well, the narrative is what it is because it's somewhere in the middle. Like, it. Like,
they know.
I'm surprised that they're like, oh, need to get ahead of these narratives, especially with the whole Jeremy Swayman stuff. When Sweeney was talking about his agent and yada yada, like, that's where it's like, no, like, you make a lot of money, you have to just eat some of this sometimes. Like, people are gonna say stuff. I think you need to eat it sometimes because it is what it is.
That's why I never have a problem criticizing a player or a team or a coach or a GM, because they make so much money. It comes with the territory. Part of the deal is it's a public job. You're going to get public scrutiny, and you should.
It's one thing if you're like consistently shitting on a player, but to, like, say a guy had a bad year or a bad game, like, it's like
part of the deal.
Yeah,
it's part of the deal. If Jeremy Swayman, you make $8.25 million per year now. You had a bad year. That's just a fact. You did not have a good year. Sweeney said as much today. So I just, to me, I go back to they, it just comes off as, I think they get very defensive.
They think so highly of themselves of like, oh, we've had a lot of great years. We went to the Cup final 19. Like, I just don't take those as like good accomplishments. Like, yes, they did do these things, but like they fell short. Like, let's call a spade, and like it hasn't been like it would. If Sweeney came out and was like, we fucked up this year, it was a brutal year, we're going to be better next year, I'd be like, okay, done. Like, I'm sold. Like, sell me why this team's going to be better and not be pissy about the reporters asking the questions.
I go back to cups matter the most. That's why we're sitting here. That's why Bruce Cassidy was fired in 2022. Stanley Cups are the biggest things. And the reality is Sweeney has been a successful general manager, except for one area, and it's the most important area. And it's not all his fault. It isn't. It's not his. I said this earlier, but you're a part of it. Yeah. You're a part of it. And everyone so far who's been a part of it has taken the fall for those things, except for him. And I think that's why, like, I don't think Sweeney should be fired right now, but I see why people want him fired. And I know that's like a fence-sitting kind of take, and people get mad at that, but like, it's true. It's true. Cups matter. And that's why we question the drafting. That's why we question their intent and what they want to do, because so close for so long. And that's not all them. It's partially, it's a lot on the players, a lot on the coaches. Like it's not just
100% on the players. Like Sweeney did everything he could. He added everybody he could, and they didn't get it done. But
100%.
When things happen and the signings, the players you sign, don't fulfill what they need to, like, that is also on you. So take your lessons and go. Don't do what they did fucking today. That was weird.
Yeah, it was quite the day. Quite the day, Marina. Very entertaining. I don't think we missed anything. We did head coaching. We did GM. So.
I'm weirdly optimistic about the future after getting
you got your anger out. You're like,
yeah, it was like a nice little therapy session. I feel so much better. Let's go win a cup next year.
Well, that's why I messaged you, because I'm like, I saw her tweets. I was like, should be good on the pod today. I think it'd be good. It's like you represent the fans well, and you're a voice of reason for a lot of people. So, Marina, what can people look forward to from you coming up?
Oh God, silence. I don't want to talk about this team anymore. This year.
Break, vacation,
hopefully. Break after this season. Give me like 4 weeks to get out of this. What is the what do we need Marchand to accomplish to get a first round pick?
Oh, it was isn't it to play like
50% of the games of the first 2 rounds?
I think, and then it's to make the conference final, I believe, and then it's a 2028 first. Someone can correct me on that.
I'm watching the game last, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm rooting for the Florida Panthers right now.
Isn't it wild? It's like bizarro world, like all the like BR open ice like Instagrams where it's like the rat line and like Kachuk and Bennett and Marchand, and
I need it to be Leafs Panthers, the Carlo Marchand Bowl.
That would be awesome. I said this on the last episode. Can't root for the Leafs, but if they did win, I'd be very happy for Brandon Carlo, and that's all that matters, at least for me. But that's just me.
Do I respect Brandon Carlo's happiness enough? I don't know if I'm there.
I do. I'm not saying I'm rooting for the Leafs, because I'm not. But if they did win, I'd be like, there's some solace there. I'll give them that.
Sounds like you're rooting for the Leafs. I will think go Avalanche and go Charlie Coyle.
Well, I will say if the Leafs do fall flat on their face, Marner probably doesn't return. I mean, Marner probably doesn't return anyway.
I don't think he's going to return anyways. I can see, like, do you see like Utah paying him $15 million or something like that?
I see Utah being in that camp. I could see Chicago putting him with Bedard. I think Marner's a fit, man. I do. I think he fits here. And I know people say, well, who does he play with? Well, you're paying him probably $14-15 million. He should be able to elevate, and he's shown he's able to elevate a Zaka or a middle step.
If not can elevate Morgan Geekie, I think Mitch Marner can do the same to someone else.
That's the thing, man. And that's why my whole plan, here's my master plan. And people say, oh, thank God you're not the GM, Evan. I actually think this makes sense. I'm not just saying this as like a joke. You compete for the next 2 to 3 years with Marner and Pastrnak driving lines 1 and 2 from the wing. It's not ideal, but that's the hand you're dealt. And then over the next 2 to 3 years, you let your centers draft. You let them develop. And let's say it's Frindell. He comes up 2 years from now, a year from now, 3 years from now. He gets to play with Pastrnak or Marner. And then he gets brought into the league with those guys. I'm fine with that. And the
really Cup's going up. Fraser Minton. Like I think the world of him.
Maybe. Could be. I mean, he showed I think he's more of a middle 6 2-way, like kind of Charlie Coyle type.
Yeah,
but
you could ultimately find.
you take that. You
down.
take that.
Yeah.
You take that. Fans always. And the other thing with the number 1 pick, and we'll do another podcast together closer to the draft so we can kind of hash these out a little bit more. But with this number 1 pick that the Bruins are going to get, everybody wants that guy to be McDavid. Be a 100-point, 90-point guy. If that guy can give you 60 plus points every single year, you take that every time. You nailed that pick. So it does, just because if it's Desnoyers, who's a 2-way guy up in the queue, if he can somehow give you 60 consistently, 60 plus, you take that every time. Oh my God, you have no problem with that. So that's another day. That's the draft. We're going to have a lot of time to talk about those things. So Marina, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Evan.
Always fun. Of course. And that's Bruins Beat. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.